Jessica reveals that the girl's name is Honey. She comes from a well-known tribe originating from a distant land called Yemen. Jessica also explains that Honey's homeland once lived under British colonial rule. According to the girl, the region only gained its independence fairly recently, in August of 1939. Jessica explains that Honey's tribe was actually quite small. They lived peacefully near several desert oases where fresh water could be found. Most of the tribe's people were simple farmers who grew vegetables and tended small plots of land. Not far from their settlement, British soldiers had once built a military garrison. The soldiers often visited the tribe to collect drinking water and buy fresh vegetables from them. But one day something strange happened. When the British soldiers arrived at the oasis as they normally did, they found the place completely empty. Every member of the tribe had vanished without a trace. Even the food that had been prepared on the tables remained untouched, as if the people had disappeared in the middle of their daily routine. After hearing this story, Chin suggests a possible explanation. He believes that Honey's tribe may have experienced the same mysterious event that brought him and his friends to the island. In other words, the entire tribe might have been transported across space and time, suddenly appearing in this strange place just like they did. Jessica nods thoughtfully and says she needs to confirm a few details. Turning back to Honey, she begins asking her several questions in Arabic, speaking carefully so the girl can fully understand what she means. After listening to Honey's answers, Jessica turns back to the group. She confirms that Chin's guess is correct. Honey explains that her tribe arrived on this mysterious island about 3 years ago and has been struggling to survive here ever since. Jessica continues translating Honey's story. According to the girl, about a year ago another group of people arrived on the island by ship. However, instead of trying to communicate peacefully, those newcomers immediately attacked Honey's tribe without any clear reason. Hearing this disturbing news, the young survivors quickly come to a decision. They believe it is important to locate the remaining members of Honey's tribe as soon as possible. If they can unite their groups, they will stand a much better chance of surviving the dangers of the island. Through Jessica's translation, they also learned something strange about the island itself. When Honey's tribe first arrived, they struggled with severe hunger while searching for food. During one of those searches, several tribe members wandered into a mysterious fog, and none of them ever returned. After that terrifying discovery, the tribe carefully followed the edge of that strange fog for an entire week. Eventually, they realized that the fog stretched across the whole island, forming what seemed like a natural boundary. According to Honey, the fog rarely moves. Most of the time it stays in the same place, only disappearing briefly during seasonal changes before returning again. Chin listens carefully and begins to think that this fog might actually protect their camp. If his guess is correct, it could keep enemies away for the next 3 months. Jessica then tells Chin something amusing. Based on everything Honey witnessed, the battle with the giant snake and the strange medicines he used, the girl now believes that Chin must be some kind of powerful sorcerer. Jessica explains that Honey was especially impressed by how Chin fought the monstrous snake and how he used what she believes to be holy water to stop bleeding. Hearing this, Chin immediately asks Jessica to explain to Honey that he is not actually a sorcerer. Chin feels uncomfortable letting the girl believe something that is not true. He does not want to build trust based on misunderstandings. However, Jessica thinks revealing the truth right now might not be the best idea. From her experience with traditional tribal cultures, she knows that outsiders are rarely trusted at first. If Honey believes Chin is powerful, it might make communication easier. Chin frowns slightly, feeling that such deception might be unfair to the tribe. But Jessica calmly argues that sometimes a small misunderstanding can help everyone cooperate peacefully in the beginning. Meanwhile, Honey seems to interpret the situation differently. Believing that the great sorcerer has accepted her presence, she suddenly kneels down again and bows deeply in front of Chin to show her respect. Jessica then suggests something practical to the group. She advises everyone to start learning Arabic. She proudly explains that she managed to learn the basics in only 2 months and that the language is not nearly as difficult as it might seem. Chin sighs and stretches his shoulders. He thinks learning an entirely new language will take a lot of time and effort. For now, he asks Jessica to continue acting as their translator until they find another solution for communication. After thinking about it more seriously, Chin suddenly remembers the system's online shop. Curious, he checks to see if there might be something useful there. Sure enough, he finds a special package called the Encyclopedia of World Languages. Once the discussion ends, everyone returns to their daily tasks. Helen begins preparing dinner, while Chin decides to head down to the river to wash up. Since autumn has just begun, the water is still comfortably warm. Meanwhile, the girls occupy the small bathing area near the cave. Jessica, being the only one who understands Arabic, takes responsibility for helping Honey adapt. She patiently tries to communicate with the girl, showing her around the camp and helping her feel less like a stranger. While helping Honey wash and clean her wounds, Jessica notices something disturbing. Besides the fresh injuries from the recent battle, Honey's body is covered with older scars. These marks tell a silent story about the many hardships she has faced in the past. Meanwhile, Helen prepares an impressive dinner for everyone. The meal includes freshly caught fish, roasted pheasant, and a variety of vegetables gathered from their small gardens. The group happily praises Helen's cooking. They tell her that her skills seem to improve every single day. Despite living in such rough conditions, she somehow manages to prepare meals that feel almost like home. Honey stares at the table in amazement. She has not seen such a variety of food in a very long time. Her eyes shine with both surprise and deep gratitude. When she finally tastes the dishes, her reaction is immediate. The flavors are rich and satisfying, far better than anything she has eaten in months. Suddenly, tears appear in Honey's eyes. As she eats, she cannot stop thinking about the members of her tribe who are still struggling somewhere on the island, many of them constantly hungry. That night, Chin decides to sleep outside in a tent near the cave entrance. He does this so that Honey can feel more comfortable sharing the cave space with the other girls. The girls try to encourage Honey to lie down and sleep properly, but she refuses. Instead, she sits in the corner of the cave and falls asleep while gripping the handles of her war blades, clearly used to always staying alert for danger. The next morning, Jessica organizes a small lesson. She begins teaching everyone some simple Arabic phrases so they can start communicating with Honey more easily. When the lesson finally ends, Chin stretches his arms and sighs with relief. He jokingly declares that the class is over and that studying languages is definitely not his favorite activity. Helen then asks Chin whether he plans to search for Honey's tribe soon. Chin replies that before doing that, he must first find a way to cross the dangerous swamp safely, perhaps by creating some kind of gas mask. However, the memory of the giant snake immediately makes him reconsider. Instead, Chin proposes a different plan. He suggests building a raft so they can sail around the island along the coastline. He plans to begin cutting wood later that same afternoon. Using a metal axe, Chin starts chopping trees confidently. The work progresses quickly, and within a short time he manages to cut down several large trunks. Suddenly, Honey appears, having followed the sound of his work through the forest. It quickly becomes clear that she intends to help him. Honey says something enthusiastically in Arabic, but Chin unfortunately cannot understand a single word. Watching her speak only reminds him again that buying the language encyclopedia from the system might be a very good idea. Concerned about her condition, Chin carefully asks through gestures whether she should really be working while still injured from the earlier battle. His question seems to surprise her, and perhaps even irritate her slightly. Without saying anything more, Honey walks up to a nearby tree. Grabbing an axe, she begins striking the thick trunk with powerful, confident swings. Chin watches in disbelief. Despite her injuries, the girl demonstrates incredible strength. In a surprisingly short time, she manages to bring down the tree faster than he did earlier, even though he was using the same metal axe. After 3 full days of hard work, they finally manage to gather enough timber for the raft. The next step now is even more complicated. They need to smelt steel so they can produce nails for construction. Helen and Jessica take the panda with them to search for useful resources nearby, leaving Chin and Honey responsible for the smelting process. To keep birds away from the area, they light a large fire that sends thick smoke rising above the camp. The mineral they are working with is pyrite, also known as iron disulfide. It requires extremely high temperatures, around 1,500 degrees, to melt. During this process, sulfur impurities are released as sulfur dioxide gas, which produces a very sharp and unpleasant smell. Working together, Chin and Honey spin the blades of a large handmade fan to push more air into the furnace. This increases the fire's intensity, helping the temperature rise high enough to melt the mineral. After some time, the rock finally begins to melt inside the furnace. Using metal tongs, Chin carefully pulls out the glowing molten mass. Looking proudly at the hot metal, Chin tells Honey that the island is about to enter its own Iron Age. For them, this moment marks the beginning of a completely new stage in their survival. Since pyrite contains only about 25% iron, the amount of pure metal they obtain is not very large. Still, it is enough to produce nails, which are exactly what they need to start building their raft. Chin thanks Honey sincerely for helping with the difficult work. He suggests that she rest for a while before they continue. Soon he will need her assistance again when they begin shaping the iron into nails. Despite the language barrier between them, Chin is slowly getting used to Honey's presence. Over the past few days, they have spent many hours working together, gradually becoming more comfortable around each other. Chin remembers that when he first saw her, she looked exhausted, pale, and covered in dirt. But after only a few days at camp, her appearance has improved greatly. Now he begins to notice her gentle facial features and well-proportioned figure. Honey eventually notices that Chin keeps glancing at her from time to time. Realizing this makes him feel a little embarrassed, and his face turns slightly red when he realizes she caught him staring. Later that evening, they pour the melted iron into a mold that Helen prepared the day before. After waiting patiently for the metal to cool, they finally remove the rough nail-shaped blanks. During lunch, the girls report their findings to Chin. They explain that they explored almost the entire area around the camp, but did not discover anything new. The only things they found were grapevines and pineapple plants, the same fruits that were already growing near their camp. Collecting more would only cause them to spoil before they could be eaten. The girls begin discussing how they might store fruit for the long winter ahead. After thinking it through, they conclude that some kind of cellar or storage space would probably be necessary to keep the fruit from spoiling. Just as they seem convinced that digging a storage pit is the only option, Chin calmly interrupts and says he has a different idea, one that he believes will work even better for preserving their harvest. Chin pauses for a moment, clearly building a little suspense, and then confidently announces to the girls that they actually have a way to preserve fruit without relying on a cellar. His tone carries a hint of excitement, as if he's about to introduce a clever solution the others haven't yet imagined. To preserve fruit properly, they will need glass jars, and to make those jars they must first create glass. Glass, of course, requires silicon as its main ingredient. So early the next morning, the young group heads toward the riverbank, hoping to find enough silicon-rich material there to begin their ambitious little glass-making project. Their trip proves more successful than they expected. Along the riverbed, they discover numerous large, transparent crystals rich in silicon. The crystals sparkle clearly under the sunlight, making them easy to identify. Thanks to this fortunate discovery, the work of collecting and sorting suitable pieces becomes far simpler, and the young people quickly gather the best samples they can find for glass production. While everyone is busy working and examining minerals, Helen suddenly calls out loudly, interrupting the others who had been carefully studying their finds. She excitedly waves something in her hand and urges everyone to look. When they gather around, they realize with amazement that Helen has discovered a bright, heavy nugget of gold. The sight instantly fills the group with excitement and delighted disbelief. Honey, however, seems confused by the sudden burst of excitement. To her, the small yellow nugget doesn't look particularly special. Curious about the other's reaction, she walks over to Chin and quietly shows him another piece she has just picked up, wondering if it might also be important. When Chin looks closely at what Honey is holding, his eyes widen in shock. What she casually carries in her hands isn't just a small piece of gold. It's a massive nugget weighing several kilograms. The sheer size of it leaves him momentarily speechless. Recovering from the surprise, he immediately asks Honey where exactly she found such an enormous piece of gold. The girl doesn't say much. Instead, she simply raises her arm and quietly points toward the flowing river, indicating that the nugget came from somewhere within the current. As the group processes what this could mean, an incredible possibility begins to form in their minds. If nuggets this large are washing down the river, then there may be a rich gold deposit somewhere nearby. The young people begin to imagine that a gold mine worth tens of millions of yuan could exist somewhere upstream. The surprises continue. Before long, Jessica makes another remarkable discovery. She finds a large, sparkling diamond and carefully estimates its size. According to her judgment, the stone must weigh at least 100 carats. She calmly points out that such a diamond could easily be worth even more than all the gold they've found so far. The group is completely overwhelmed with excitement. With gold nuggets, diamonds, and rich mineral deposits all around them, it begins to feel almost unreal. Some of them start joking that the mysterious island they landed on might actually be the legendary El Dorado, a mythical land of riches that people have searched for throughout history but never truly found. Despite all the dazzling discoveries, they remind themselves that treasure is not their priority right now. What they really came for were the materials needed for their survival projects. So after spending the entire morning gathering resources, they collect enough silicon crystals and slowly make their way back toward the camp. Making glass requires more than just silicon. Chin explains that additional substances are needed to strengthen the material. To solve this, he begins crushing seashells into a fine powder. The powdered shells will act as a binder, helping improve the durability and stability of the glass they plan to produce. Glass is essentially a silicate material with an amorphous structure, which means it doesn't have one precise melting point like ordinary metals. Still, it requires extremely high temperatures, well above 800 degrees Celsius, to become molten. To reach such intense heat, Chin realizes they will need to construct and use a compressor system to intensify the fire. While Chin and Honey focus on melting the raw materials into glowing liquid glass, the other girls work on preparing the tools they'll need. They carefully craft hollow tubes that will later be used to blow and shape the molten glass into useful objects. Once everything is ready, Chin takes one of the tubes and dips it into the molten glass, rolling a glowing mass onto the end. He then turns to the girls and tells them to watch closely. Slowly and carefully, he begins blowing air through the tube, inflating the hot glass and shaping it like a balloon. Honey watches the entire process with wide eyes, completely astonished by what she is seeing. The idea that hard stone-like material can melt and behave like liquid is almost magical to her. Once again, she looks at Chin with admiration and calls him a powerful sorcerer. Chin laughs and explains that it's not magic at all, just science and careful technique. He tells the girls that when blowing glass, it's crucial not to let the molten material cool too quickly. At the same time, the tube must be rotated constantly so the spinning motion spreads the liquid glass evenly. Even with all his explanations and careful effort, Chin's first attempt doesn't turn out perfectly. The bottle shape ends up uneven and flawed. Still, the system acknowledges his achievement and rewards him with 1,500 points simply for successfully producing glass for the first time. Chin then turns to Helen with a smile and asks if she would like to try blowing glass herself. The girl's eyes light up immediately. Eager to help and excited to learn a new skill, she happily agrees to give it a try. Jessica quickly hands Helen a pair of simple homemade tongs. With this tool, Helen will be able to carefully pinch and shape the neck of the bottle while the glass is still soft and glowing hot. Chin watches her movements closely. As Helen works, it becomes clear once again that she possesses many hidden talents. Remarkably, she manages to form the neck of the bottle successfully on her very first attempt, giving the object a clean and elegant shape. Helen continues working with steady hands. She slowly pulls and adjusts the molten glass, carefully stretching it to create a balanced and symmetrical neck. Her movements appear calm, confident, and surprisingly skilled for someone trying this craft for the first time. Despite the impressive result, Helen doesn't seem completely satisfied with her work. She modestly says the bottle isn't very high quality because she feels she didn't rotate the glass evenly enough during the shaping process. The others immediately disagree with her criticism. They believe Helen is simply underestimating her own ability. Smiling and encouraging her, the group praises the bottle's neat appearance and assures her that she has done an excellent job. Chin explains the next step in the process. Once the glass piece is finished, it needs to cool slowly to harden properly. He plans to place the bottle into water and later use the diamond he found earlier as a cutting tool to refine the final shape. The girls then ask Chin if he could create a rotating table for them. Such a device would make shaping glass and other materials much easier, since it would allow them to spin the workpieces smoothly while they work. Chin agrees and promises to build one soon. As he thinks about it, he also realizes that he has finally accumulated enough system points to purchase something important, an encyclopedia of world languages. With it, communicating with Honey will become far easier. Honey holds one of the finished glass bottles in her hands, studying it with fascination. She has never seen anything like it before in her own world. To her, the group truly seems like powerful magicians. Meanwhile, Chin secretly purchases the language encyclopedia from the system, which instantly allows him to understand Honey's speech as if she were speaking Chinese. However, he decides to pretend that his sudden understanding of Arabic is simply the result of diligent studying. The following day, Jessica continues her lessons, patiently teaching the group Arabic phrases. At the same time, she helps maintain the fire in the kiln and practices improving their glass-blowing techniques so they can create different shapes and tools more efficiently. Meanwhile, Chin and Honey spend the day transporting sand and saltpeter-rich soil back to the camp. Their goal is to extract potassium nitrate, a crucial ingredient for making explosives. Chin understands that bombs could become the most powerful defensive weapon on the island. Unfortunately, the saltpeter deposits in the nearby bamboo forest are limited. Later that evening during dinner, Chin suddenly shares a new idea. Now that they have successfully learned how to produce glass, he proposes building a telescope. Such a device could greatly improve their ability to observe the island and scout the surrounding environment. Helen immediately becomes interested in the idea. She wonders aloud whether Chin plans to build a telescope based on the Galileo design or the Kepler system. She begins explaining how both optical systems work and considers which one would be more practical for their situation. She explains that in Galileo's telescope, the objective lens is convex and collects light, while the eyepiece is a concave lens that spreads it. Although this design works, it has a major weakness, a very narrow field of view that limits what the observer can see. Helen then describes the Kepler system, which forms the foundation of most modern optical devices. In this design, both the objective lens and the eyepiece are convex. This arrangement significantly increases the field of view, though it also produces an inverted image that must be corrected with additional lenses. Helen says she believes she can craft the necessary convex lenses, but she will need a rotating mechanism to properly shape the glass. Without such a device, achieving the correct curvature and precision will be extremely difficult. The next morning, Chin gets to work. Using clay, he forms a round rotating block that can act as a simple spinning platform. Though basic, it should be enough to help Helen shape the lenses accurately. With the help of this rotating mechanism, the group manages to form a perfectly shaped clay funnel. This funnel will serve as the mold used to create their glass lenses. Helen then carefully polishes the inside of the clay mold. Lacking proper sandpaper, she cleverly uses a smooth sheet of bamboo to grind the surface until it becomes perfectly even while also adjusting the curvature of the funnel's edges. The first mold turns out exceptionally well, encouraging the group. They go on to create 4 more identical molds. Once all 5 are ready, they pour molten glass into them. After the glass cools, they pair the pieces together to form the lenses needed for their telescope. Now they only need to adjust the distance between the lenses to achieve the proper focal length. Normally, the focal length should be greater than the spacing between the lenses. As Chin experiments with different positions, he is amazed by how powerful their homemade optical device becomes. Helen studies the image carefully and notes that it's still a little blurry. However, she admits that the clarity is already impressive, and the magnification appears to be roughly 8 times stronger than normal vision. Honey peers through the device and gasps in amazement. Seeing distant objects appear so close feels almost supernatural to her. In Arabic, she excitedly tells the others that the telescope is like a divine eye that can see far beyond human limits. Once they finalize the correct focal length, the telescope is essentially complete. Chin selects sturdy bamboo tubes and carefully builds a protective housing to hold the lenses securely and protect them from damage. They also notice that they have several leftover magnifying lenses. Using these, they create simple magnifying glasses capable of focusing sunlight to start fires. Even though they still have a lighter, they know it could eventually break, so having a reliable backup method is extremely valuable. With these preparations finished, the group finally feels ready to begin the next major project, building a raft that can carry them away from the island. The Encyclopedia of Fieldcrafts provides descriptions of many types of boats and vessels. However, most of them are relatively small, like simple fishing boats or narrow canoes. Chin decides they should build something more stable. His plan is to construct a double-hulled raft. This design will consist of two identical floating hulls connected side by side, which will improve balance and reduce water resistance while moving. Helen is surprised to discover that Jessica not only knows how to fly airplanes, but also understands how to navigate sea vessels. This knowledge makes Jessica incredibly valuable for planning their escape. After finishing their discussion, the group begins building the raft together. Fortunately, the design Shin selected is fairly simple. Thanks to the teamwork of the entire group, the construction process moves forward quickly, and the raft begins taking shape faster than they originally expected. Cheyenne took responsibility for constructing a small protective cabin on top of the raft. She worked carefully, tying together wood and bamboo, so the structure would be sturdy enough to shield them from heavy rain or sudden waves while they traveled across the sea. About a week later, after many long days of work and adjustments, the floating vessel was finally finished. The group carefully pushed it into the water, successfully launching their handmade craft. Now the real moment had arrived. It was time to see if their raft could truly sail. That night, Honey stood quietly under the open sky, gazing through the telescope with deep curiosity. The countless stars above her seemed brighter and closer than ever before. In a soft voice, she whispered her thanks to the powerful sorcerers, grateful for showing her wonders she had never even imagined existed. The girl then closed her eyes and offered a silent prayer to her God. In her heart, she spoke to her father, asking him to hold on and wait for her return. She believed with all her heart that help was coming soon, convinced that the sorcerer would lead salvation to her people. Meanwhile, Chin sat nearby, deep in thought. His face looked serious as he stared quietly at the sea. Helen noticed his silence and gently asked him what was on his mind and why he seemed so absorbed in his thoughts. Chin admitted honestly that he felt very nervous about the voyage scheduled for the next day. It would be their very first journey across the water, and the responsibility weighed heavily on him. There were many risks to consider, and he could not stop thinking about them. Helen smiled reassuringly and tried to calm him down. She reminded him that Jessica would also be sailing with them. With Jessica's strong navigation skills and experience, she believed they would be able to overcome any challenges that might arise along the way. After her words, a quiet moment settled between them. The two young people looked at each other for a long time without speaking, the silence filled with unspoken thoughts and quiet understanding. Their quiet moment didn't last long. Suddenly, Jessica approached them and politely asked if she could join their conversation, her tone light and curious. The young people reacted with noticeable embarrassment when they saw her. Jessica was wearing very little clothing, clearly prepared for the warm sea weather, and her appearance caught them completely off guard, making them awkwardly avert their eyes. Early the following morning, carefully timing their departure with the rising tide, the group gathered at the beach beside their raft. The sea was calm, and everything was ready for the long journey ahead. Helen remained behind at the camp together with the panda. Chin told her there was plenty of food stored there and asked her to stay safe and avoid wandering too far unless absolutely necessary. Standing near the shoreline, Helen waved to her departing friends. They waved back enthusiastically, shouting for her to stay safe and promising that they would return as soon as possible. Although the others insisted that she stay behind for her own safety, Helen still felt a small sting of resentment deep inside. Being left behind made her feel slightly excluded from the adventure. Kin insisted that he didn't usually suffer from seasickness. Still, he admitted he was worried about the ocean itself. Large waves could easily overturn a small raft like theirs, and that thought stayed in the back of his mind. Honey, however, seemed much more relaxed about the voyage. Since her people had once arrived on this island by sea, sailing and fishing had long been part of her life. For her, traveling across the water felt completely natural. The girl quietly stared toward the distant horizon. In her mind, she spoke to her fellow tribespeople, promising them that she was bringing help. She believed strongly that the people traveling with her would save her village. Jessica soon began explaining the dangers of the surrounding waters. She warned them that strong rip currents often formed in this area when waves crashed against the rocky shore. These currents could suddenly pull a boat away from land and push it toward dangerous waters. Seeing the others grow tense, Jessica quickly reassured them. She told everyone not to worry and said she would take responsibility for navigation. She was ready to guide them and answer any questions they had along the way. By midday, the wind suddenly died down. The sail hung loosely, and the raft drifted slowly across the quiet sea. Realizing they had entered a calm area, Jessica ordered the sail to be lowered. When the wind still hadn't returned after some time, the young men had no choice but to start rowing. Honey didn't have an oar, so she simply watched as the others struggled, their muscles straining with each stroke. Human strength could not compete with the vast power of the ocean. The raft moved painfully slowly across the water. After only an hour of rowing, the group was already exhausted and decided to stop for at least 30 minutes to recover their energy. By the time the travelers finally reached the opposite side of the island, the sun had already begun to sink below the horizon. The sky glowed orange as they prepared to drop anchor and spend the night floating quietly on the water. Jessica studied the coastline thoughtfully and estimated that the island stretched for roughly 350 kilometers. Using the raft's average speed and the strength of a steady wind, she began calculating how far they had already traveled. According to her estimates, they had likely covered about half the distance toward their destination. Even though the journey was tiring, she kept a positive tone in her voice, hoping to encourage the others and keep their spirits high. After a brief discussion, Jessica volunteered to take the night watch herself. She explained that her experience with navigation made her better suited to monitor the raft and the surrounding waters. The others trusted her judgment and didn't argue. Kino woke up very early the next morning. The gentle rocking of the raft had already disturbed his sleep, but what truly woke him was a strange sound coming from somewhere outside the boat. Chin soon learned from Jessica that he had only slept for 2 or 3 hours during the night. Strangely, however, it had felt much longer to him, perhaps because of the deep exhaustion from the previous day. To pass the remaining quiet hours before dawn, the young people began chatting. Their conversation gradually shifted toward topics related to ships, exploration, and the long history of sea travel. Jessica seemed especially happy to share stories from her own experiences. She told them about fascinating journeys, strange places she had visited, and many humorous moments that had happened during her travels. Chin listened with great interest. He admitted that he had never realized how exciting the life of a paleontologist could be. Hearing Jessica's stories opened up a whole new perspective for him. Seeing his curiosity, Jessica decided to impress him even more. She began talking about prehistoric creatures that had lived millions of years ago, describing enormous animals that once ruled the ancient Earth. During their conversation, the two of them glanced at Honey, who was sleeping soundly nearby. She was so exhausted from the journey that even their lively discussion failed to wake her, which made them both smile softly. As their conversation continued, they discussed many different topics related to ancient life. Eventually, they reached the conclusion that the largest creatures ever to live on Earth were massive marine giants that once ruled the oceans. The raft gently rocked with the movement of the waves, creating a peaceful rhythm. Apart from the quiet splash of water and the distant sound of wind, the only other noise was the soft echo of their ongoing conversation. Kaya quietly observed Jessica while she spoke. He noticed how passionately she talked about her work. Her eyes sparkled with excitement, and her hands moved energetically as she described ancient creatures. The following morning was truly beautiful. From the first light of dawn, the wind filled their sail once again. The raft began moving steadily across the water, lifting everyone's spirits. Later that day, as the sun slowly lowered in the western sky, the young men used the telescope to scan the distant horizon. Through the lens, they finally spotted the outline of land. Honey could barely contain her excitement. She shouted happily and told everyone that they had finally reached the far side of the island. Her voice was filled with both relief and pride. The group quickly anchored their raft near the shore. After securing it safely, they climbed onto land and began slowly walking inland toward Honey's village. Honey admitted that she had never personally traveled through this exact area before. Because of that, she could not say with certainty how far away her village actually was. She also warned them about another possible danger. Vikings sometimes appeared along this coastline, and their presence could be extremely dangerous. Because of this, she urged everyone to stay alert. After resting for a while, the group continued their journey the next day. As they walked deeper into this part of the island, Chin noticed that the trees here were much taller and thicker than the ones near their old camp. Honey suddenly became excited. She recognized parts of the surrounding landscape and confidently told her friends that they were heading in the correct direction. Not long afterward, the gray eagle informed Chin that several two-legged creatures were nearby. The warning immediately made him cautious. Jessica noticed Honey suddenly stop walking and asked what was wrong. Frowning, Honey explained that normally guards watched the borders of the village, yet now there was no one there, which worried her. Fine decided to ask the gray eagle for more details. The bird reported that it could see many two-legged figures moving around. This only increased their confusion, since it was impossible to tell whether these people were Honey's tribesmen or dangerous Vikings. The guy quickly told the girls to stay where they were. He decided it would be safer if he entered the village alone first and quietly observed what was happening. However, Honey ignored his warning. Suddenly filled with urgency, she dashed forward and ran quickly toward her village without hesitation. When Honey finally reached the center of the village, she saw all the villagers gathered together in a tense group. They were arguing and discussing what to do next. The elder tried to calm everyone, explaining that they currently lacked the strength and resources needed to launch any rescue effort. At that very moment, Honey burst straight into the middle of the gathering. She shouted loudly to catch everyone's attention. Startled by the sudden voice, the villagers immediately turned to look at her. The villagers rush toward Honey the moment they recognize her. Several of them gather around her at once, speaking all at the same time and asking countless questions. They want to know where she has been, whether she is hurt, and how she managed to return. Their faces are filled with shock, relief, and overwhelming happiness at seeing her alive. As the noise settles slightly, Honey begins to learn what happened after she disappeared. Her heart sinks when she hears that both her uncle and the chief of the tribe vanished shortly after she went missing. Despite many searches, no one has found any sign of them, and the uncertainty has left the entire village in grief. The village elder slowly explains the tragic events. After Honey disappeared, the tribal chief personally led a group to search for her. Unfortunately, during that journey, they encountered Vikings. The chief was captured, and only one wounded warrior managed to escape and return with the terrible news. Taking a deep breath, Honey forces herself to calm down. She realizes that her people are frightened and desperate. Gathering her thoughts, she prepares to tell them that they are no longer alone, that help has come, and that they now have allies strong enough to rescue their chief. Raising her voice so everyone can hear, Honey asks the villagers to quiet down. She urges them to listen carefully because what she has to say is important. She wants to explain the situation clearly and share a possible plan to save their tribe. Honey begins telling the story of what happened after she disappeared. She explains how no one was able to find her because she had unknowingly wandered into the dangerous Deadlands. After crossing those harsh lands, she eventually reached the other side of the island. Her fellow tribespeople listen in disbelief. They are stunned to hear that the other side of the island actually resembles their own land. According to Honey's story, the Deadlands do not mark the end of the island, but instead split it into two separate halves. Continuing her story, Honey explains that while she was there, she encountered a powerful sorcerer who was willing to help their tribe. However, many villagers exchanged doubtful glances, struggling to believe her words and thinking the tale sounds more like a myth. One woman gently approaches Honey and places a comforting hand on her head. In a soft voice, she suggests that Honey may simply be exhausted from everything she has endured and that her imagination might be filling in the gaps after so much stress. A large warrior standing nearby suddenly speaks up in a loud voice. He criticizes Honey harshly, saying that as the daughter of the tribal chief, she should not rely on childish legends. He even declares that he regrets every compliment he ever gave her. Honey remains calm and firmly replies that she is not lying and that the sorcerer truly exists. With unwavering confidence, Honey insists that the sorcerer she met is real and that he is willing to help them drive away the enemies threatening their people. She pleads with the villagers to trust her words. A warrior named Kay laughs mockingly and asks Honey where this so-called great sorcerer is hiding. If such a powerful figure truly exists, he says sarcastically, then surely he should appear before them now. Before Honey can respond, the crowd suddenly grows restless. People begin pointing upward and murmuring in alarm. High above them, a giant eagle swoops down from the sky at incredible speed, its massive wings casting a shadow over the village. Seeing the enormous bird descending toward them, the villagers panic. Some shout warnings while others scramble to move out of the way, fearing the powerful creature might crash directly into them. Moments later, the scene becomes even stranger. The eagle lands calmly on the outstretched arm of a young man. The bird bows its head obediently, and the young man smiles slightly as he looks at the stunned villagers and casually asks if they were looking for him. The entire crowd falls silent. Every pair of eyes turns toward Chin as they study him carefully. The villagers are confused because the legendary sorcerer they imagined in their stories was supposed to look far more mysterious and imposing. Chin quickly realizes he must take advantage of the moment. Using his sudden reputation as a sorcerer, he hopes to gain control of the situation. But as he watches their faces, he notices many of them still look skeptical. Deciding that a demonstration is necessary, Chin prepares to show them what they will believe is magic. In reality, it is nothing more than simple science. He calmly pulls out a lighter and flicks it open. A small flame suddenly appears from the tiny metal object in his hand. The villagers gasp in astonishment. For them, fire emerging from such a small device looks completely impossible. Chin hears murmurs spreading through the crowd. People whisper that the gods must have heard their prayers and sent them a powerful sorcerer capable of summoning fire from nothing. Soon several villagers drop to their knees in front of him. They bow their heads respectfully, acknowledging his power. Watching their reaction, Chin cannot help but chuckle quietly to himself. However, Kay remains standing nearby with a skeptical expression. If this man truly is a messenger of the gods, Kay believes he must possess incredible strength. The warrior feels a growing urge to test that strength in battle. Honey quickly steps forward to defend Chin. She passionately tells the villagers that he truly is powerful. She reminds them how he captured a giant bird and even defeated a massive snake. According to her, if he wished, Chin could defeat anyone in the village. Rather than calming Kay down, her words only ignite his pride even more. The warrior straightens his posture and prepares himself, clearly eager to challenge Chin. Sensing the growing tension, Chin decides he must end the doubt quickly. Activating his cheetah speed skill, he moves with incredible swiftness. In the blink of an eye, he appears right in front of Kay and calmly presses 2 fingers against the warrior's forehead. The villagers are stunned by what they see. They whisper among themselves in amazement because no human should be able to move so fast. Kay himself is completely shocked. He didn't even see Chin move, and suddenly the young man was standing right in front of him. Chin calmly explains that he will use only 2 fingers to test the warrior's strength. If Kay truly believes himself strong enough, then he should try to overcome such a small challenge. Kay gathers all his strength and attempts to stand. But to his horror, he realizes he cannot rise from his seat at all. Chin's 2 fingers hold him in place as if he were completely powerless. The warrior strains with all his might, muscles trembling from effort. Yet no matter how hard he tries, he cannot break free. He cannot understand why such a tiny force feels completely impossible to overcome. Looking at him calmly, Chin asks whether he now understands the power of the magic he is trying to resist. Around them, the villagers whisper nervously. Kay has always been known as the strongest warrior of their tribe, yet even he cannot defeat the sorcerer who uses only 2 fingers. After struggling for several moments, Kay finally lowers his head and admits defeat. In a reluctant voice, he declares that he cannot accept the challenge. Suddenly, Kay leaps up from his chair, surprising everyone. Chin instinctively becomes cautious, unsure of what the warrior might do next. But the tension fades almost immediately. Kay simply turns away and walks off slowly, his shoulders heavy with disappointment after his defeat. In truth, Chin knows that his victory was not magic at all. It was a simple trick based on human biomechanics. Just then, the village elder approaches him and desperately begs him to save their tribe. Jessica steps forward and addresses the villagers loudly. She announces that the great sorcerer has indeed come to help them and that they should trust him. The elder respectfully raises his hands toward Jessica and greets her with deep reverence, calling her a great sorceress as well and acknowledging her importance in front of everyone. All around them, villagers whisper to one another. To them, the newcomers truly seem like mysterious sorcerers. Their strange clothing and unfamiliar language feel almost divine. Jessica smiles at Chin and quietly admits that his performance was impressive. With a playful grin, she says he could easily become a professional actor with skills like that. Curious, she suddenly asks how he managed to learn Arabic so quickly. Chin answers with a smug smile, claiming it is simply his natural talent for learning. Then he raises his arms and loudly declares that the gods have heard the villagers' prayers and sent him to save them. The elder informs the group that night is approaching and invites them to follow him. He kindly offers them a place to rest in the village for the night. As they walk through the settlement, Chin notices something interesting. The homes are round and shaped like tents, exactly as Honey had described earlier. Soon evening falls over the village, and a peaceful silence spreads through the area. Chin begins to feel extremely tired after spending the entire day under everyone's attention. Meanwhile, Honey enthusiastically tells the villagers about how she got into trouble but was rescued by the powerful sorcerer. She describes how he defeated a giant snake, claiming that flames burst from its mouth before it collapsed lifelessly. She proudly shows them the telescope as well, calling it a divine eye given to her by the great sorcerer. Through it, she explains, one can see objects that are extremely far away. Nearby, one man quietly asks Kay why he still looks so angry. Perhaps, he suggests, the warriors simply cannot accept being defeated by such a powerful opponent. As the young visitors observe the village more closely, they realize something worrying. The tribe has only a few dozen people, including many elderly and children. Several warriors also have fresh wounds, which will weaken their ability to fight. Suddenly, the entrance of the tent opens. A small girl steps inside carrying food. She politely says she is happy to see the powerful sorcerers and respectfully offers them the meal she prepared. Jessica immediately notices the nervous look in the child's eyes. Seeing that quiet fear fills her heart with sympathy and concern. Jessica gently kneels down beside the little girl and speaks in a calm, caring voice. She asks the child what is troubling her and encourages her to speak openly. With patience and kindness, she tells the girl that she can share anything that is on her mind. Tears begin to gather in the child's eyes as she looks at the young visitors. Her small voice trembles as she begs them to help her tribe. The desperation in her tone reveals how much suffering the villagers have endured. Her voice shakes with emotion, and the girl struggles to keep from crying. Kin leans closer to comfort her, speaking softly so she won't feel afraid. He reassures her that everything will be all right and promises sincerely that they will do everything they can to help the village. While trying to calm the child, he suddenly remembers something important. He reaches into his bag and realizes that he still has some supplies left. Hoping to cheer the girl up even a little, he takes out a piece of dried boar meat to share with her. The girl's eyes immediately light up when she sees the food. She accepts the dried meat with clear excitement because she hasn't eaten anything like it in a long time. In truth, the tribe's daily meals have become painfully small and simple. As they continue talking, Jessica gradually realizes something heartbreaking. The little girl hasn't eaten properly for 2 full days. The realization fills her with sadness and deep sympathy, making her understand that the tribe's situation is far worse than she had first imagined. After quickly eating the meat, the girl suddenly looks embarrassed and apologizes. She says she feels guilty for eating so much and not saving any. Chin immediately reassures her, smiling kindly and telling her that there is still plenty of food left in his bag. During their conversation, the group learns more about what happened to the tribe. When the Vikings attacked, the villagers were forced to flee quickly to survive. Because of the sudden escape, they were unable to gather enough food before leaving their homes behind. Jessica now clearly understands the seriousness of their situation. There simply isn't enough food to support everyone, and the approaching cold weather is making survival even harder. Many animals have already hidden away for the season. Just then, the village elder quietly appears at the doorway, carrying a small portion of food. The elder looks curiously at the little girl standing with the visitors. With a gentle but questioning tone, He asks her what she is doing here instead of helping with the village duties. Shin quickly steps forward to defend the child. He politely asks the elder not to scold her, explaining that she stayed only because he personally asked her to remain and speak with them. The elder nods in understanding. Wanting to show respect and hospitality, he offers the young visitors some fruit that the villagers gathered earlier that day along with a small portion of carefully saved rabbit meat. However, Shin immediately declines the generous offer. He gently explains that the tribe already has very little food and insists that the supplies should go to the villagers who need it most. He continues by explaining humbly that he is really no different from them. The only difference, he says, is that the gods happen to choose him for a special role. He asks the elder to remind the villagers not to treat him as someone far above them. Then Shin opens his bag and shows that he still has some dried meat left. He hands it to the elder and asks him to distribute it equally among the villagers so that everyone can gain at least a little strength. Tears appear in the elder's eyes as he accepts the gift. His voice trembles with gratitude as he thanks the young people sincerely for their kindness and generosity. The arrival of these mysterious sorcerers from ancient stories has stirred strong emotions among the villagers. On one hand, they feel joy because they believe their prayers were answered. On the other hand, they feel uneasy, unsure how to behave around such powerful figures. The elder, who must now lead the tribe in the chief's absence, feels the pressure most of all. Every decision he makes could affect the survival of the entire community, and the responsibility weighs heavily on his shoulders. Shin quietly admits that he can almost feel the weight of his new title. It feels as if every villager is watching him closely, examining his every move as though he were under a magnifying glass. Jessica smiles warmly and encourages him not to worry. She reminds him that he isn't facing this situation alone. As the old saying goes, people working together can achieve incredible things. The next morning arrives, and when they step outside the elder's house, they are surprised by the strange silence that fills the village. Shin looks around in confusion, wondering where most of the villagers have gone. His expression grows concerned, but Honey quickly explains that everyone capable of fighting has gone to the nearby hills to search for food and supplies. Soon the elder approaches them again. With great respect, he offers Shin a small gift of freshly gathered fruit, explaining that the villagers value his magical food greatly and wanted to show their gratitude. The elder also expresses another hope. He wishes that the great sorcerer might join the tribe's warriors in battle so that the villagers could witness his power with their own eyes. He believes this would greatly strengthen their morale. Jessica quickly understands that Shin has been placed in a difficult position. She smoothly explains that the great sorcerer used much of his power when he descended from the heavens. Because of that, he cannot fight directly at the moment and can only guide them with wisdom. Shin silently feels grateful to Jessica for rescuing him from the awkward request. In truth, he knows he must avoid any direct battle that could expose the truth behind his magic. After learning that the Viking camp lies only a day's journey away, Shin decides to investigate it himself. He sets out with Honey while Jessica stays behind to help the tribe with their immediate problems. Before they leave, Jessica warns them to be extremely careful. After half a day of careful travel, the two of them move far away from the tribe's territory and eventually cross into land controlled by the Vikings. They move quietly and cautiously, avoiding noise and staying hidden among the trees. The night passes without incident, and by morning they reach a vantage point overlooking the Viking camp. Using a spyglass, Shin carefully studies the enemy camp from a distance. He notices immediately that the Vikings appear strong and well-trained, and many of them carry iron weapons and tools. Watching them closely, Shin reflects on the reputation of these warriors. Vikings are known for their brutality, often killing or enslaving anyone who stands in their way. Facing such enemies will not be easy. At that moment, Honey suddenly grows anxious. She points urgently toward a specific part of the camp, her eyes widening with worry as she recognizes several of her captured tribesmen. The captured villagers are chained with heavy metal restraints. Under the watch of armed guards, they are forced to perform exhausting physical labor. Shin also notices something else important. The camp is heavily guarded, with warriors standing not only at the entrance but also stationed at the corners. This level of security suggests the Vikings may fear threats from somewhere on the island. Suddenly, A massive golden eagle circles overhead. Chin immediately senses that something is wrong and realizes someone must be approaching nearby. His suspicion proves correct almost instantly. Without hesitation, he quietly orders Honey to hide as quickly and silently as possible. Soon afterward, a group of Vikings walks along the nearby path. They are arguing loudly in Norwegian, waving their arms as they debate something intensely. Thanks to his knowledge, Chin understands their conversation. Some of the warriors insist that they should stop and rest because they are tired from marching. Others argue that they must continue forward to follow their commander's orders. Eventually, the disagreement ends when the tired group convinces the others. The Vikings decide to stop and rest beneath the shade of several large trees. One of the warriors begins telling a dramatic story to pass the time. He claims that natives once distracted a giant snake long enough for them to escape at the last possible moment. Some of the other Vikings laugh at the story and accuse him of exaggerating. They claim he simply invented the tale to hide the fact that he ran away in fear. The conversation soon shifts to another rumor. They begin discussing a legendary fountain of youth that supposedly allows warriors to fight even in old age. According to them, their commander possesses a map leading to it. One Viking explains that finding the fountain is not the greatest challenge. The real danger is the mythical creature said to guard it, a terrifying leviathan that protects the sacred waters. According to their stories, the fountain lies hidden beyond a wall of magical fog. This strange fog supposedly divides the island into two separate regions and hides many secrets. One of the men describes his terrifying experience with that fog. He says he encountered it once and felt a deep sense of dread, something he never wants to experience again. Suddenly, their squad leader interrupts the discussion. In a strict voice, he orders the warriors to stop chatting and reminds them to focus on their duties. Even as they settle down, Chin continues quietly listening. The Vikings keep whispering about the mysterious fountain and the strange legends surrounding it. The thought unsettles him. Could there really be something supernatural hidden on this island? The possibility that these legends might be true begins to trouble him. Then he remembers the map mentioned earlier. That detail makes him realize the Vikings probably did not arrive here by accident. They likely knew about this place long before coming. Honey quietly asks what he is thinking about. Chin replies thoughtfully that he is trying to understand everything the Vikings said, hoping their conversation might reveal something useful. Honey looks at him with amazement when she hears his explanation. She cannot believe that he can understand the Vikings' language as well. Her admiration for him grows even stronger. Chin answers Honey with calm confidence, explaining that his ability comes from what he calls a divine gift. According to him, this blessing allows him to learn and understand almost any language in a surprisingly short amount of time. Hearing this only deepens Honey's admiration for him, and she looks at him with even greater respect. Just then, the two hear movement coming from the group of Vikings nearby. The warriors are clearly finishing their break and preparing to move again. Their voices grow louder as they gather their equipment and begin following their commander's orders to continue their journey. Not far from them, another scene unfolds. A small group of desperate men is running through the forest, trying to escape pursuit. One of them struggles forward while carrying a badly wounded comrade across his shoulders, clearly exhausted but refusing to abandon him. Behind them, several furious Vikings chase relentlessly. They shout loudly to encourage one another, their voices echoing through the trees. It is obvious that they have no intention of letting the fugitives escape alive. The man carrying the injured warrior finally cries out in desperation. His strength is fading quickly, and he can barely keep moving. In panic, he asks Kay what they should do next because their chances of escape are becoming slimmer with every step. Kay suddenly stops and turns toward him with a hard expression. In a cold but determined voice, he tells the man that they may have no choice but to leave the wounded warrior behind if they want any chance of surviving. He continues firmly, explaining that if they try to carry the injured man any farther, the Vikings will catch all of them. If that happens, none of them will survive to return to their people. The wounded man begs desperately, pleading with Kay not to abandon him. He says he does not want to die alone in the forest. Kay responds without hesitation, saying that if they all die, then no one will remain to protect the tribe. For the tribe to survive, someone must be sacrificed. Trying to harden his resolve, Kay urges the injured warrior to be brave. He reminds him that he is a warrior of the tribe and should face death without fear. In the end, they leave the wounded man behind. Kay grabs the other warrior by the arm and pulls him away quickly, ordering him not to waste even a second. Kay speaks firmly as they run. He admits that what they are doing is painful, but insists it is necessary. Everything they do must serve one purpose: the survival of the tribe. At that exact moment, Honey suddenly leaps out from the forest directly in front of them. With blazing determination, she draws her battle blades and lets out a loud battle cry that echoes through the trees. Almost instantly after her shout, arrows begin flying through the air toward the Vikings. Many of them strike the warriors in their legs, forcing them to stumble and slow down. Kay quickly realizes the situation has changed dramatically. Now they have a real chance to fight back. Without hesitation, he orders his companion to stop the Vikings from using their signal horn at all costs. Meanwhile, Honey charges fearlessly at one of the Vikings and unleashes a rapid series of attacks. However, the Viking proves to be an experienced fighter. He blocks her strikes and fights back skillfully. Kay notices something worrying. Their stone weapons struggle to break through the Vikings' sturdy shields. He knows they must quickly find another way to turn the battle in their favor. Suddenly, Kay accelerates and rushes toward another Viking nearby. Seeing only a wooden spear in Kay's hands, the Viking laughs loudly, convinced that such a simple weapon cannot harm him. But Kay strikes with explosive force. The impact of his blow is so powerful that the Viking is thrown violently backward, crashing several meters away. Even after witnessing such a powerful strike, the remaining Vikings refuse to retreat. Their fierce warrior spirit remains strong, and they continue attacking with confidence that victory still belongs to them. Kay continues blocking their attacks while shouting orders to his ally. He tells him to circle around from the right side in hopes of finding a weak point in the enemy's formation. Unfortunately, the maneuver fails. Within moments, the tribal fighters find themselves surrounded by a tight ring of Vikings closing in from every direction. Amid the chaos of battle, Kay suddenly notices something unexpected. The great sorcerer, Chin, has used the confusion to slip away and is now helping the wounded warrior escape from the battlefield. Understanding the situation instantly, Kay makes a quick decision. He orders his men to pretend they are weakening, drawing the Vikings' attention toward themselves while giving Chin a chance to escape unnoticed. The risky tactic works. While the Vikings focus on the remaining fighters, Chin manages to move far enough away with the injured man to reach a safer distance. Once they are hidden among the trees, Chin kneels beside the wounded man and tells him gently to calm down. He assures him that they managed to escape and that he is safe for the moment. As he observes the man trembling with fear, Chin realizes something important. Not everyone in the tribe faces death the same way. While Honey seems fearless in battle, this man is clearly terrified, and that fear is completely natural. Chin then looks toward the sky and signals to Gray Eagle. He commands the bird to send a signal to the others that it is time to retreat. Honey sees the massive bird circling above them and immediately understands the message. Raising her voice loudly, she tells her fellow tribesmen that the moment has come. They can now fight with all their strength. At that moment, a powerful Viking charges directly toward Honey. He swings his sword with deadly force, his face twisted with anger and determination to strike her down. Honey reacts instantly. Using her agility, she slips aside to dodge the attack. In the same motion, she counters with a quick strike from her combat blade aimed at the warrior's vulnerable side.